All right, we'll talk today a little bit about the cultural diversity and the Fair Housing Act. In this world now, in the United States, we are becoming more diversified in some of the. Uh, I don't even know how to say it. We're becoming more diversified. There are more different nationalities coming into America today and buying homes and becoming citizens and doing what they should. Now, with that, though, remember they bring a cultural difference that we're not used to. So we're also going to talk a little bit about fair housing. And I've had a couple of situations in my career where I dealt with what I would call, a different culture on how they believe and act. Um, so cultural diversity and fair housing. First of all, some of the definitions. Wells Fargo, yeah, you know this. Wells Fargo has what they call the emerging markets now. The Hispanic market was originally what they deemed as the emerging market. With that, now we see a lot more of like the Burmese coming in. There's obviously the Sikh and the Middle East coming in. We also have some nationalities. I dealt with someone from Greece that was a Greek national that bought a house, which was a completely different scenario for me because they dealt with real estate differently. Funny story is when I was closing with this gentleman, and his name was Nikolai or Nicholas. At the closing table, you sit down and we're getting ready to close, and he immediately slams his hand on the tables and says, "Okay, one more. I'll give you this." And he tried to negotiate. Of course, we're all looking at him like, what the heck? And then he started looking at us like, what the heck? And the funny thing was, he said, in my country, that's very common that when you get to the closing table, you do one more round as a final gesture. And we said, well, that's not how it's done here. We have a contract. You agreed upon a price. That's the price we're paying. We're here to close today. And he was kind of astonished that our culture did it that way. Needless to say, I was quite astonished that his culture did it that way as well. So you've got to be cognizant and aware of the fact that, what you have taken for granted all your life as closing really may only be the American way. There are probably other different cultures that maybe do things differently. Buddy of mine was a practicing attorney, and I remember he had a situation or a case come into the office, and he and I used to split an office, so I don't think I was supposed to overhear. We talked a little bit about it afterwards because it turns out it was nothing proprietary, but he had a gentleman that was Indian, and I mean Middle East Indian, not American Indian, and the guy was actually trying to retain his services because he was mad that he was trying to buy a gas station from a fellow Indian national who he said, I bribed him the most and he is refusing to deal with me. And this guy wanted to sue to get his bribe back. And, at first, my buddy looked at him and I could see his face and he's like, I'm sorry, what? And he said, yes, in our country, it's very common that people give gifts, what we would call a bribe, to a landowner, and whoever gave the biggest gift, i.e. the biggest bribe, would be the one that got to deal with the owner about buying the property. That was a common occurrence, at least according to him, where he came from. He might have been making that up, I don't know. But all I know is that was his statement was, I bribed him the most. He didn't follow our culture. Now I want to sue. And of course, the attorney friend of mine said, well, that's not how the law works here. We cannot sue to get a bribe back because you're not happy. So while that maybe not be 100% real estate, it was involved in a real estate deal. But the factor was that was a common practice, according to him, in their culture, to be the one to get to bid. Here it's the seller deals with the highest bidder. There, the seller negotiates only with whoever bribed him the best. Okay? Now, that could be a cultural difference. You have to get used to working with different cultures. And, unfortunately, we are fat, dumb, and happy. We, being the American people, are fat, dumb, and happy about how other cultures do stuff. So when they come here, we almost have to kind of set some ground rules when you're getting out of getting into it. And I remember that I have dealt with 4 or 5 of the Burmese, and I've had a translator, and the translator and I got to be pretty good friends, and we got to be pretty vague and open. Not vague. We got to be pretty open with each other about things, and I was literally asking him, hey, what do you guys expect? That's not common. How do you do it in your country? And I literally approached him with the mindset of an educational question. I didn't challenge him on it. I'm like, hey, that's not the right way. You guys are dumb. Tell me this way. No, I said, hey, look, I don't know. How do you guys do it? And he kind of went through, the basics of in Burma, or now Myanmar, was Myanmar, now Burma. It's now Myanmar. How real estate happened. And I thought that was a good working for me, because then I got to understand the culture and the client, so that I had to explain, hey, we run a title work here. Title work shows ownership. So, when dealing with different cultures, I think it's not unfair for you guys. It's not unfair for you guys to actually ask. But I think you need to be careful how you broach it, and potentially, if you ask it in a learning scenario, I don't think there's anybody that's going to be upset with you. Say, hey, how do you guys buy real estate? Or maybe the left-handed way of doing that is take them through the process and go, here's how we buy real estate in the United States. It's done on this kind of process. If there's anything other than the process I just explained to you that you may be used to, let's talk about it now, because let's see if that's not what we do, or maybe I'd left to step out, or maybe you've got something different in mind, or you're expecting something else. So you've got to be real careful with dealing with the different cultures, okay? Don't forget that we have federal law. We have the Fair Housing Law. We also have a state agency that deals with fair housing. So Indiana has its own state fair housing department. If there's an issue, you would call the Indiana State Fair Housing Department. Ultimately, HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, is the controller of the state law or the federal law on fair housing. Now, when dealing with housing, and I'm sure you guys have got this emblazoned on your brain, how many protected classes do we have? Go ahead, tell me. Now, I'm sorry, hold on. I know you shot your hand up real quick like you were sure of the answer. I'm sure that you're sure of the answer. But let me clarify. How many federal protected classes do we have? And what I mean by that is, I'll tell you here in a minute, that some states can actually be more restrictive on their protected classes, and but you can't be less. So there are 7 federally protected classes, right? Race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability. Those are the 7 protected classes. And the reason I wanted to back up and mention the word federal is because some states have gone above and beyond. For instance, the Washington State actually has military status as a protected class. They also have sexual preference as a protected class. Feds do not. Now, Indiana, I love Indiana. I don't know if we're just lazy or smart, because Indiana, most all federal laws, we have just copied and pasted into Indiana law. So right now, there are currently no other protected classes in Indiana other than the 7 federal ones. And the reason I say that is because OSHA laws, same way. States can be more restrictive. Indiana uses the OSHA laws. EPA, some states can be more restrictive. So Indiana uses the EPA laws, the federal laws directly. Many states do that because I guess it's much easier than trying to go out and be more restrictive without having some kind of data to back it up. But currently in Indiana and the state law, we have the 7 protected classes. And you know those: race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status. Question? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Race, color, religion, national origin, familial status, disability. That's it. I can't say them slow. I can only say them fast. Race, color, religion, national origin, familial status, and disability. Yeah, that's 7. Those are the 7 protected classes. So in the housing world, it is illegal to discriminate based on one of those 7 protected classes. Handicap. Did I say handicap? Handicap's protected class. Race, color, religion, that's 3. National origin, familial status, disability. Now you guys got me. Race, color, religion, national origin, sex, gender is what that means. Familial status, and disability. That's the 7 protected classes. Whew, it's been an early morning. I haven't had enough coffee yet. So those are the federally protected, mandated protected classes. Indiana has no more than that currently. There are some prohibited practices that you need to remember. Obviously, the one that we've got there on the board, as you can see, is the protected class, is block busting right here. Block busting was originally called the white flight or panic selling. And what was happening there was unscrupulous investors would go into an area and say, hey, the so-and-so people moved in. And originally, it was, let's face it, it was, hey, the black people are moving in. It's going to lower the value. Obviously, it can be anything, any of the protected classes, but it was originally done with the race issue. That's why they called it the white flight, as a bad nickname, all right, because what they were doing is going in and telling people, hey, certain nationalities or people are moving into the neighborhood. It's going to lower the property value, so you need to move now before your properties get hurt based on that. A completely scare tactic that, you know, by the sense of the definition is just dumb as hell in my opinion. It's one of HUD's critical elements. There was a profit motive, obviously, for the investors to go in and try and scare the people into moving. So you need to make sure that that doesn't happen in your neighborhood. You don't want to get involved in erroneously idiot other neighbors saying things, hey, don't let that person move in because it's going to lower my price value. Those kind of idiot things. And that happened in the 50s to the 60s. I know that we still have racial issues today, and I'm not sure if it's getting better or worse, but hopefully we're getting smarter. And like the running joke that I tell everybody, man, there should only be one color that you guys worry about, right? What is it, Dave? Exactly. Green. If you've got the green, you're my client. If you don't have green, you're not my client. And thank goodness that having money right now is something we do discriminate on. Obviously, if you don't have the money, you can't buy the Ferrari. You know, can't buy the house, can't buy whatever you want if you don't have the money. You should not be looking at clients any other manner other than that.